Now I want to talk about the sixth source, which is known as the We Were Children, and it is a deeply moving documentary that sheds the light on the painful experience of indigenous children in their Canada residential schools. So these schools were a part of a government-led policy aimed at forcefully um, assimilating indigenous children by removing them from their families and community, forbidding them from speaking their native languages, and trying to erase their cultures. The documentary focuses on two survivors and through their personal stories. So it reveals the lasting scars these institutions left on indigenous people. So the residential schools were government funded church run institution designed to civilize indigenous children. The schools operated from the 19th century until the 1990s with more than 150,000 children, I think so, were forced into them. The system aims to strip children of indigenous identities and to Christianize them. So there was abuse was by so they were by get abused and by also get physically harmed and emotionally harmed and sexual abuse, often by the very people supposed to the care for them. The children forcefully taken from their families, and from many never saw their parents again. So, what was the impact? So, the impact was the survivor feature in the Weevil children recall their traumatic expressions both in schools and their release. So the psychological damage was these children experience was as they were often treated were wrong or um, with critically and their culture identities were shamed or suppressed and the survivors in their films recount how they were taught and that their language, tradition, and custom were wrong or inferior. So these children were left to navigate a world where they were alienated from both their own heritage and the broader Canadian society. So the addiction, depression, and the loss of identity became common consequences for many survivors who struggle with the emotional, psychological toll of abuse. So the we can say the film follows the two main survivors, the Lorna and the Glenn, whose stories are haunting and incredibly powerful. Lorna was taken to a residential school at the age of 6, and her story reflects the separation from the family and the confusion she felt as a young child. She recounts how she was punished and for speaking her language and forced to adopt a foreign way of life and making her feel disconnected from her roots. So the Glen was similarly taken away from his family and placed in an institution that he described as a place of torment and humiliation. Both survivors, like many other experience severe trauma, but their religion in sharing their story also highlighting the power of healing through the acknowledgement and understanding. So, we will the children also criticize the role that the both Canadian government and religion institution played in residential role in that, and as well as the truth and the Reconciliation Commission of Canada, which called as a TRC, which documented the experience of the residential school, was an important step. But the film suggested that the true reconciliation requires more than just acknowledgement, it requires action. So this documentary views to understand that the deep impact of these systems and consider what needs to be done to address the historical wrongs.